you. Right, thank you. Okay, it's 6 o'clock and welcome to the Hexham Town Council here on Monday the 8th of April 2024 at 6 o'clock in the Prior's Hall, Hexham Abbey. We are being filmed by Hexham TV. So we will start the meeting. So just so everybody knows, I'm chairing the meeting. I'm Derek Bendy, the Mayor of Hexham. And we go to our second agenda item, which is public participation, where we're asking members of the public if they have any questions in or around Hexham. Hand up, please. So if you would stand, say your name. I want a question, so please keep it brief. If there's anything about Northumbria Water, we will capture those and we will pass those on to Northumbria Water after we've done the presentation. Okay. So I'll take consent.
Thank you. My question,
Your name, please.
Matthew Greening, Hexham resident and Timeliness Trust volunteer. My question is related to your presentations, but it's a question of the council.
Yeah.
And I think, recognising, as we all do, I'm sure, how rivers are the very identity of our area. And I'm thinking about the emerging and worsening data on untreated sewage releases. I'd like to ask the council what the council can or intends to do to influence those responsible for water quality, beyond just the presentation this evening, as much as that's very welcome. How is the council going to determine to be our champion in this, our representatives in this, so that this isn't just a one-off presentation, we may not come back in a year's time, but what is the council's opportunity and potential to really influence this, because it is so dear to our hearts, and this is just a tiny representation of people who care about this.
Okay, I will take that one to the representation of the council. Okay, second question. Okay.
Hi, I'm Nick Morfitt, a Hexham resident, and this is a question specifically for Northumbria Water. While it's disappointing to see that known sewage spills on the north and south Tyne increased by almost a third last year, I do accept that this is in part because of better monitoring. What concerns me most is that there were still 5 poorly monitored sewage assets on the north Tyne and 5 on the south Tyne. The water companies were required to be monitoring all storm overflows by the end of last year, so I'm wondering if Northumbrian Water could tell me why they didn't manage to hit that target and what they're doing to get the last few poorly monitored sewage assets properly monitored.
Yes.
Wendy Breach, Hexham resident. Question for the Town Council, but related to Northumbrian Water.
Yeah.
I was wondering if the Town Council is aware that Northumbrian Water is 75% owned by a Hong Kong family whose dividends last year equaled £110 million.
Is there a question? So,
I was asking if the Town Council was aware.
well, I didn't know, I don't know if anybody else.
Now you know.
No, we don't, thank you. Right, okay, thank you. Right, so just for clarity again, that is a public participation clinic is ends there, so there's no more speaking of both or across the Town Council. The Town Council can go with it in full mode. The Town Councillors capture those questions and we will ask those questions on your behalf. So there's no interaction beyond with the
Chair, my question was of the council, not of Northumbrian Water.
Yeah, so I'll answer that at the end after the 30 minutes, I think we'll answer that question. Conscious you lady have any questions?
Apologies, yes I do.
Right, okay. You would stand, say your name, ask a question.
Okay, that was just a nick of time, wasn't it?
Yes.
So, good evening, I'm Zaria Greenhill, I'm a Hexham resident, I'm interested in water quality. I would like to know if the council would like to see the Northumbrian Water's plan, online real-time sewage outlets map or alert system that was meant to be in place in December 2023 and apparently isn't there yet, and would you like to see it? When it's ready, and when would it be ready, maybe?
Well, we'll ask that question to the experts. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Right, so we will now go into 3 apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Councillor Sells.
Thetford, and Wolf. Okay, any disclosures of interest? Any dispensations? No? Right, okay, so we'll now go to number 7, so we'll keep number 6. We'll now go to number 7, which is to receive a presentation from Northumbria Water and the Environment Agency. So we have Mike Madine and Jim Kessler. So thank you and welcome to Hexham.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for inviting me. I wasn't strictly speaking invited. I kind of slightly gate crashed, but I did arrange it with Andrew because Northumbria Water pointed out that some of the questions that were being asked are perhaps ones that the Environment Agency should contribute to. So that's what I'm here to do today. My name's Jim Heslop. I'm the Environment Planning and Engagement Manager for North East England for Environment Agency. We're going to suggest that we go through the whole presentation and then take questions if that's okay. So, in terms of, interesting. My computer's having a little nap. Sorry, just bear with me. It's just because the computer's gone to sleep. Okay, the worst thing is the slides aren't that great, but anyway. So, apologies, let's put my glasses on.
It says no inputs detected on the HDMI one.
Yeah, I've unplugged that just in case it was. It's the laptop that's having a moment. The display's all fine.
I've got your slides on the other laptop if that's any easier.
I'll just restart the app and see if that does the trick. It probably will. Okay, so sorry about that. So these were the 4 questions that were posed, and the bits in yellow were bits that were flagged to me as questions that we would need to contribute, particularly the second one. You know, a couple of the questions that touch on bacterial monitoring, bacteriological monitoring. So I'll talk about those 2 first, and then talk about the classification in terms of where the Tyne water body is. So, water safety. So, my interpretation of this was the main interest was around Tyne Green, which obviously is a popular place for rowing and kayaking and the like. The situation at the moment is that unless there's a bathing water designated, rivers are not specifically managed around human health standards. So, in terms of bacteriological monitoring, okay? So the monitoring is all based around attaining ecological standards, and obviously those ecological standards provide a good indication of what the overall health of the system is. So if you had significant sewage pollution, you would expect to see an impact on the ecology, and that's part of the logic around why under the Water Framework Directive ecological status was chosen as the ultimate arbiter of the status of the system. But I recognise that that's not necessarily what people are interested in the context of bathing waters. It's a specific designation process around bathing waters that has some criteria around numbers of bathers and presence of toilet facilities. And I know I've had quite a few conversations in recent times where people have kind of expressed their disappointment about, you know, the limitations of that opportunity to have bathing waters, both in terms of what you need to demonstrate and in terms of the fact that monitoring is done over the course of a specific summer period when people might be using bathing water all year round, for example. So I think that's understood, but that is the current legislative framework that we work to. The other point to make in terms of general water safety is that when we are monitoring for E. coli and intestinal enterococci, we're basically monitoring for indicators of fecal contamination. And that can arise, yes, from sewage discharges, but it also arises from other sources, urban diffuse pollution, agriculture, particularly during rainfall events. So it's just important to be aware that you know, that there are wider sources of that contamination, and also there are other organisms that are potentially problematic in fresh waters, algal scums, leptospirosis, those sorts of things. None of those are necessarily trying to put people off from that. I'm just saying that in terms of water safety, there is some advice on Swim Healthy on Gov UK, which provides a bit of an overview of the things to consider and making a decision about where you're going to go. In terms of monitoring, one of the questions is about monitoring. As I said at the beginning, you know, we are not resources, not part of our remit to do that type of monitoring other than in bathing waters. So it's quite a straightforward situation. Whilst I appreciate that that's not necessarily what people would want. Okay, so that's those questions. The next bit is really about the Water Framework Directive classification. The question was, how does the time do compared to other waters? So this hasn't come up brilliantly well, but this is the water body that the Tyne and Tyne Green is a part of. So it goes from waters meet to the tidal limit, so it's quite a big water body. In terms of ecological status, it is moderate currently, okay, and I'll say a bit more about why that is. But just in terms of comparisons, you've got the Tyne water bodies on the right. So the classification goes from high, which is near natural conditions, absolutely minimal departure from natural conditions, good, where there's very little, and then successively more impact as you go through moderate, poor and bad. Our target is good, or where we have high to maintain high, okay? So you can see that you know, moderate is the biggest group of water bodies in the northeast. Sorry, where it says area, that means northeast England, effectively. And generally, the overall pattern of water quality is better in the northeast than it is nationally. But you'll also see that there aren't that many water bodies that are good. So that is a concern for everyone, and indicative of the amount of work that needs to be done on improvements, including investment, whether we're talking about water company or we're talking about other types of intervention to improve the water environment. Okay, so why is it moderate? Two elements from an ecological status point of view make it moderate. The first is invertebrates. So invertebrates are moderate. The way the system works is that the classification is based on the worst performing element. We will be doing an investigation this spring in terms of macroinvertebrates. So these are the insect life, the worms, the mollusks that live on the base of the river and at the margins. Absolutely critical part of the ecosystem, but also a very good community to see the impacts of different types of pollution. So we'll be doing an investigation, first of all, checking to see if that is still moderate. And if so, to start trying to investigate what is driving that, what is the reason for failure. The other reason it's moderate rather than good, mitigation measures assessment. So very briefly, basically the Tyne is a heavily modified water body. That means that the man-made interventions on it, often physical habitat, that could be artificial flow and other things, are such that they constrain the ability of that water body to achieve good ecological status. And in that situation, we're required to work out what mitigation measures could be put in place to make it as good as it can be. And that assessment isn't fully implemented. So we do have a project, we are looking at the time, we are designing potential interventions. These are the sorts of things that get taken forward often by partnerships, or the catchment partnerships, the Tyne Rivers Trust, or the host for the catchment partnerships, all those organisations coming together and delivering projects on the ground, often with volunteers such as you've got here tonight. So that's the mitigation measures assessment. Fishes, if people may or may not have noticed, fish isn't on there. That's because it's not used as a classification element on this water body. That's about the size of the channel and the methodology. It's kind of a technical thing. What I can say is that the first upstream water bodies that are suitable for that to be a classification element are high, the fish, and the Tyne is still, is still the best salmon and sea trout river in England. So it is a special river. That doesn't mean there's nothing to be concerned about in terms of making improvements, or indeed in terms of the fisheries, but all of the at-sea survival issues with climate change and so on. But currently in very good shape. Physico-chemical status, so if we're thinking about sewage pollution, organic pollution, these are the sorts of things that we would expect. They're all high apart from temperature, which is good, so the overall status is good. High, obviously, in this context means high, the highest quality, so the lowest amounts of these pollutants. So that indicates that in terms of those 12 samples or more across the year, that we're not seeing impacts, say, from sewage pollution. But they are points in time. Finally, chemical status, it is a fail. Why? 2019, we started to monitor for a new set of chemicals, sometimes called forever chemicals, global pollutants. We didn't monitor all the water bodies, but everywhere we looked, we found them. So the conclusion, rather than monitoring everywhere at huge expense, is that those chemicals are present throughout the environment. The strategy is of ceasing using them, and then over long periods of time they should drop out. But every water body in England fails on that particular basis. Okay, no questions apparently. We'll keep going because I've probably spoken for too long. So.
Okay, thanks Jim, and thanks for the invitation for Northumberland Water to come along and talk to you. I guess not only about storm overflows, but a little bit about our environmental plan as well. I know we're tight for time, so I'll skip through one or two of the slides. I'm going to send the slides through to Council Clerk, so you can share the slides amongst you, and I'll pick out the headlines as we go. So just a little bit of background on Northumberland Water. So we actually serve about 2.7 million customers in the North East. We also have a sister company in the South East, Sussex and Suffolk Water. We will provide water-only services. So all of our wastewater services are provided in the North East of England. We have a whole range of assets that we manage associated with providing that service to customers. I think the main topic we want to talk about today is the storm overflows. We've got just over 1,500 storm overflows across our whole network in the North East of England. So we are one of the highest performing, one of the better performing water companies across the sector. So 32 of our 34 bathing waters are classed as good or excellent. We saw quite a significant drop in storm overflow discharges between 2021 and 2022. As the gentleman mentioned earlier, we have seen an uplift again between 2022 and 2023, around about a third, as quoted. That's largely driven by the increase in the level of rainfall between 2022 and 2023 as well. We actually have the second lowest number of pollution incidents across the whole of the sector, and for 2 years in a row have had 0 serious pollution incidents within our region, and we are classed as the #1 provider for customer service by Ofwat. In our current 5-year planning cycle, that's how we work in 5-year cycles. The current cycle is 2020 to 2025. We're investing over £80 million to make storm overflow improvements. We have installed monitors on 100% of our outfalls. So again, the question from the gentleman earlier, all of our outfalls have monitors on them. We measure the operability of those monitors throughout the year. So if a monitor breaks partway through the year, we have to take some time to replace it. That will affect the operability. It will mean we don't have what we would call 100% operability. It'll be a lesser number. Just had a quick look at the numbers on my notes there. Last year, for 2023, out of all the monitors in the Hexham catchment, we had 4 monitors that were not above 99% operability. And that will be because we're using smart technology. We get some failures with these monitors now and again. We might need a new battery, the antenna can be damaged, so on and so forth. We are about, hopefully in May, to publish near real-time storm overflow data. Again, that was one of the questions asked at the back. We had an original plan that we would do that by the end of 2023. There has since been a national debate around how and when all companies should publish that data. That debate involves representatives from DEFRA and government. We want to try and join up that publication with other things that are going on across the sector in relation to storm overflow investment plans. So at the minute, the latest update I've got is that will be published in May. It's what we would call near real-time reporting of spill data. So you can look on our website and you can look at what's happening with the storm overflows. Near real-time is generally within 1 hour of an event. It will be on the website. You'll be able to see what's going on. We already published that data. We've got bathing waters along the coast, and we already share that data with Surface Against Sewage, and they publish it on their app for all the bathing waters on the coast. So that already happens today when we've got bathing waters. We have a whole range of long-term plans that we want to hit. So one of those for storm overflows would be to get all storm overflows spilling less than 10 times a year by 2050. That is actually a statutory requirement now, and I'll talk about our plans to achieve that shortly. We aim to have 0 pollution incidents overall, and we've got a target at the bottom there to reduce sewer flooding by 60%, that should say. I won't go through this. It's a very short clip just explaining what a storm overflow is and what it does. I'll share the slide deck and you can see that. I've tried to use an independent clip, so this is Ofwat's version of what a storm overflow actually does. We also have a version on our website if you want to go and have a look on our website. Okay, so coming to our investment plans for storm overflows. So our investment programme in the next 5-year cycle, 2025 to 2030, is likely to be in the region of 4 times bigger than our current plan. So we're investing in the region of £600 million on our wastewater system. The next planning cycle, it's likely to be nearer £2.4 billion. Within that £2.4 billion, about 1.7 will be purely associated with environmental improvements. Within that 1.7, about £1 billion in total will be aimed at improving stormwater flows across the whole of our region. So a significant increase investment in stormwater flow improvements. In our region, that is targeting 159 stormwater flows in the 5-year planning cycle. Within that 159, we are actually improving 12 within what we call the rural time catchment. So that's this map on the right-hand side here, and that stretches across to the right, just east of Consett, down to Alston in the south, up to Reedsdale north. So quite a big catchment. So within there, in the 5-year plan cycle, we'll be improving 12. Overall, up to 2050, as part of our overall plan, we'll be improving 116 overflows. In the 5-year cycle, 2025 to 30, those improvements will cost in the region of £35 million within the rural time catchment, and overall, to 2050, about £250 million. Each 5-year planning cycle, we'll relook at this, we'll reassess the impact on the environment, and this plan might change a little bit. Also, this whole plan is still subject to approval by DEFRA, the Environment Agency, and Ofwat, or Economic Regulator. We talked about river water quality. So by 2035, we will be installing over 2,100 monitors in the river to monitor the quality of the river. About 25% of that number will be in the next 5 years, and then the remainder will be between 2030 and 2035. And that will capture pollution indicators, so things like dissolved oxygen, temperature, pH, turbidity, and ammonia. It will not capture bacteriological information. So focusing in a little bit more just on Hexham, so I've given you the big picture, looked at the rural time, looked at Hexham specifically. We have 17 storm overflows in the Hexham drainage area. And I'm going to give you a little bit data now on those individual overflows. So I've listed all of them here. I've gone back to 2020, then 2021, 22 and 23, and just listed the number of discharges from those storm overflows over that period. On the very right-hand side here, I've shown where we have located those storm overflows in our overall investment plan. So for some of the storm overflows, they already meet the requirements of the government storm overflow discharge reduction programme. So they generally spill less than 10 times in any 1 year. So on those ones, there are no improvements planned for those storm overflows. We have one planned between 2030 and 2035, you can see CSO, and the middle one there, which is the highest spilling one in 2023 from this catchment, and then the rest are currently planned for 2040 to 2045. One or two other points just about pollution specifically. So we are currently investing around about £80 million in infrastructure upgrades in the current 5-year planning cycle. That will be things like sewage treatment works upgrades at Hexham, some work at Slaley sewage treatment works. We're doing some partnership work with the Environment Agency on flood risk reduction in areas of the Tyne as well. Another issue with pollution is misconnections. So we actively look for and investigate misconnections. This is where customers have inadvertently plumbed toilets, washing machines, dishwashers into the wrong drainage system, and it ends up in a river or water course. In the Hexham catchment, we've only got 3 of those at the moment, and they're being actively investigated. I'm pleased to say the vast majority of times we go and talk to customers, they will actively fix those things themselves to remove the pollution. We have an industry-leading approach called bin the wipe. So a big part of blockages on the network are about wet wipes being discharged. All of our monitors will pick up blockages. We have what we call an early alarm system in the network, where if we get an indication that there's a blockage starting to occur, we will dispatch a crew, remove that blockage before it becomes a discharge to the environment. But part of that is also educating customers to not put wet wipes down the toilet, because that's not where they should go. They should actually go in the bin. We're also working very closely with government to try and ban wet wipes altogether. The whole of the sector is doing that. And we're also trying to remove the automatic right of connection for new development. So again, we're talking to central government about this. So at the minute, developments can connect surface water as well as foul water into the network. Yes, they have to follow a hierarchy of preference where they exhaust other alternatives first, such as going to a local water course, soak away, or whatever. But there is still an automatic right of connection, which just adds burden to the wastewater network when you're adding more surface water flows to it. And that's what can cause the overflows to discharge more during rainfall conditions. That's a whistle stop to our of our plan.
Right, okay. So we'll have some questions. So I'll look at the questions. So, any?
Right, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. It's a question for Jim, really. So there's quite a lot of concern about water discharging into the environment, the quality of it. But I'm wondering seeing that the Environment Agency is a governmental body, what are the mechanisms for the Environment Agency to contribute to change the environmental standards? So what contribution do you make to that conversation, please?
Broadly, when we're asked to advise by the government, so in terms of making policy, that is a government role. It's obviously led by DEFRA, as you know. So that when government is hearing from public or other imperatives that we might need to have a different approach, then it's a matter for them to consider that. They would generally ask us for advice around what might be involved in that, what the impact might be, things like regulatory impacts are potentially considered. So that's our role in effect.
So many questions. Can I have one for each, if that's all right? The first one is the Environment Agency. A couple of weeks ago, it was released on Politics Today that 5.05 million of your shares are invested in the water companies themselves and their parent companies. I don't think, as someone who monitors them, that that's a particular objective, and would you consider divesting those pensions from those companies? So that's my first question. My second question is, you were talking about Northumbrian Water, you were talking about investments, so 18 million into the CSOs. Severn Trent Water are currently looking at sort of natural solutions to sewage spills. So they're looking at things like water fleas, Daphne, in order to kind of contain and filter the sewage before it even gets to the river, and then using the products as biomass. Are you investing anything per se in looking at natural solutions and research into how to make it cleaner before it even hits the water? That's my two questions.
Okay, so in terms of the pension fund, I have no direct knowledge of it, to be honest. It's independently managed. I think now our pension fund is jointly held with a couple of local authorities, I think Bristol and another one, because it's part of managing that at a bigger scale to be more efficient. I don't doubt that what you've said is correct, but I don't really think there's I can't really offer any comment if I'm honest.
Do you think that, in your opinion then, do you think it affects objectivity?
I really don't know.
No.
I think the people that work at the Environment Agency are there because they care deeply about the environment and they're very passionate about it, and I don't think we go out and do inspections and are influenced by that in any way, shape or form. Most people will be completely unaware of it. And if you think about it, we probably regulate a lot of industrial companies in the UK. So, if you kind of applied that across the board, I'm not sure what the implications would be. But there's a board, there's a committee that looks after the pension.
Okay.
It's not a sort of day-to-day operational matter for us.
So yes, we are the simple answer. So we already are doing a lot of work on the installation of integrate constructed wetlands as part of a treatment solution at our treatment works. We've launched some partnership projects in the current 5-year planning cycle with the Rivers Trust, and we have also agreed a very ambitious programme across the whole of our region with the Rivers Trust to investigate the use of catchment nature-based solutions across many of our areas. For storm overflows specifically, the government guidance is quite clear. The target is to reduce the number of spills, not treat the discharge. However, irrespective of that, we are looking at some locations where we can trial localised treatment of discharges from storm overflows as well. That's not started yet, but I expect that to start in the next 12 to 24 months.
Right.
So we're very much on catchment nature-based solutions rather than hardcore engineered solutions.
The wetlands is a big solution in my mind, and also Severn Trent's current research. So yes,
Yeah, and so all the stuff I presented is on our website, including our business plan. There are many examples of nature-based solutions in the business plan.
Okay.
Just two questions. First question is, you were talking about the giving visibility of the storm overflow data, which would be brilliant. Would there be the same possibility of giving that visibility of data from the EA, from the insect and plant? Would that be visible as well?
So you can look on the Catchment Data Explorer to see all of the classification data for all water bodies. So there's a lot of information there. So that is designed to give transparency around the data that underpins the classification.
And second question. As town councils, we try and engage with the community, so we have a lot of these full-time council meetings, and I can count. Normally there's about 1 or 2 people in the audience, so we've got a packed audience tonight. So it'd be great if you could, I don't know what the cycle would be, but if you could come back maybe in 6 months, just to give us an update, because I've never seen so many people here with so many questions to ask. So I'm hoping that we can keep the dialogue open and the conversations going.
Can I make a suggestion on timing for that? Because these things go in cycles. So we get our draft determination from our regulator at the beginning of June this year. What then happens is we have a period to work over that, see what we think about it, talk to the regulator about things that we think that their money's not got quite right, what we would like to change. We then get the final determination in probably no later than December this year. So that's when we've got absolute certainty about what's in our plan and what's funded and what the plan looks like. So we could either come back after draft determination, when there'll still be some uncertainty, or wait until we get the final determination from the regulators to say, here's what's in the plan.
So wetlands determination?
The final determination will be in December this year. Yeah.
Sorry, can that be influenced? Because I'm just thinking, presumably, partly sort of thinking maybe we'll have an input into that.
The whole thing is subject to public consultation. So Ofwat publish their determination on their website. You can comment on that determination if you want to, but you have to comment to the regulator.
Alison, Stephen, Tom.
Thank you. Would you swim in a river in Hexham yourself? No, you would.
When it's a bit warmer, yes. Yes, I would.
Would you?
Yes, we do.
And the second question, Jim, you mentioned about how you'd failed on the chemical status. I'm just wondering what those chemicals are and what they would have been used for.
I'll have to come back to you with the exact names. They're all really quite.
I'm not bothered about that, really. It's just more,
What sorts of things are they?
yeah, what they use for.
Sort of flame retardants and non-stick chemicals, and compounds of mercury. I'm not sure of all the uses for those particular chemicals. But
So where do they come from? How are they accessing the water?
They've been, as I understand it, and I will get you some more information on this just in case I'm not getting this quite right, but this kind of been widely used in various products in very small amounts, but because of their persistence, they are turning up over time in the wider environment.
Just ask Mike a question. Just to tell you, you said that there's obviously a lot of investment coming. I think a lot of people are a bit angry at the fact that there's money being given to pension fund dividends that maybe should have been invested in infrastructure. Are you satisfied that there's a sufficient amount of money being invested into the infrastructure rather than dividends or going elsewhere? I know that there have to be dividends too.
Yeah, so I can't comment specifically on dividends, but at a broad perspective, an investor expects a return on their investment. So therefore, if I was investing, if you were saving money in the bank, you'd expect to get some money back. So I think that's part of the mechanism for funding our industry. In relation to, is there enough money, and I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way, is there enough money being invested? I think all companies in the sector would like to invest more money. The way that we do that, though, is through customers' bills. So the preference from Ofwat, our economic regulator, for quite a few planning cycles now has been to suppress impacts on customers' bills, so try and keep bills down. To fund this programme that I've just talked about, bills are going to have to increase quite a bit. The sector would like us to increase bills actually even more, to do more improvements to the environment and actually do it faster. But what all the regulators are trying to juggle here, and central government to be fair, is we've got a bit of a financial crisis going on at the minute, so they're trying to balance how much do we invest and how much of an impact does that have on customers' bills as well. And I think we've got a tough problem, to be honest with you. It's easy for me to say we should invest more. For this planning cycle, the money's coming from three places. So our shareholder has already agreed to put in additional finance into the business. So we are starting our plan now, not waiting until 2025. So they've promoted £120 million upfront investment, so we can get ahead of the programme. Overall, they will be investing in the region of 400 million. We then borrow money from the banks to fund our significant capital programme, and then the rest comes from increases to customers' bills.
Okay,
Thank you for coming in and doing your presentation. I'm a little bit sceptical. It's very much a corporate presentation. You've used your own definitions, nobody else's definitions. 100 bathers. So are we saying that the people who, from Hexham Rowing Club, for example, who go on a Saturday morning, over 100 kids or whatever, are they safe? Are you telling us they're absolutely safe in the waters of the Tyne from E. coli and all the resultant diseases that come with spillage? Can you give us that categoric assurance for the kids of Hexham and for the kids who support the rowing clubs, many of which are my friends, that they are absolutely safe and don't suffer from the same sort of pollution that the university rowing boat race suffered at the weekend? Is that an assurance from yourself, categorically?
I can't give you that assurance now. When I gave my presentation, I tried to be quite clear that in swimming in the river environment, there are some sources of bugs. So there is always going to be some level of risk in the natural environment. That's not a reason to accept enhanced risk from sewage pollution or anything like that. But no, I can't give you that.
Is it greater? I mean, you said before, and this is why it's a copper thing, we've hit our target 34%. Well, if my maths is good enough, there's 66% of your target that you've not hit. That's a worry. We talk about investment rather than actual. So when people talk about investment, that usually means they haven't invested previously before. And that's why we're investigating, because we've got a problem now. Would you accept that there's been a lack of investment previously? And that's why you're having to do all these investigations now.
So you're asking me?
I'm asking anybody.
Yeah.
You can continue your presentation. I'm not blaming you specifically.
That's fine. I'm here to answer the questions, and as far as I'm concerned, the increased scrutiny in this and all the people that turn up who may feel, may be critical of us as an organisation, it's all good stuff in the sense that it allows us to have more conversations about fundamental importance of the environment and investing in it. You do get the environment that you pay for. That's a reality, as with anything else. A great deal more investment is needed. I think you can see that in the water company plans. I would just put in a little bit of a word for all of the other types of things that are needed as well. So in terms of habitat improvement, in terms of fish passes, diffuse pollution projects, all of these things are very, very important too. We have to manage rivers as systems, and within the catchment that they drain, pretty much any activity has the potential to affect that system. So that's why we need this broad coalition of parties to work together through the Catchment Partnership, which we've referenced before. So Tyne Rivers Trust lead that in this catchment. You're probably thinking, oh, he's dodged the question, he hasn't said whether or not there hasn't been enough investment in the past. I mean, it's not for me to judge in terms of the balance that has been struck between increasing bills or stroke providing investment, because that balance is considered by others. But what I am happy to say is we are off the pace, so I completely take your point on the chin in terms of, I think you were talking about the numbers of good status water bodies. We've got a long way to go. I completely agree.
I'll bring Tom in.
So obviously the topic of water quality has been a big issue now for several years. I'm just wondering why we waiting until 2025 before we're having a significant increase in investment into improving the waste outflows. That's not the waste.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think it's right to say we haven't invested historically. And I don't think that's what either of you said specifically. So since privatisation, the sector has invested hundreds of millions of pounds to improve water quality. A lot of that has been invested in treatment facilities, removal of direct discharges to rivers and the sea, and also improvements to storm overflows. So there was a significant improvement programme between the year 2000 and 2010 to improve storm overflows, mainly targeted at adding screens to storm overflows, but that often meant completely reconstructing the storm overflow and providing storage to reduce discharges to the environment. So there's been a significant investment across the whole of the sector in water quality specifically. In addition to that, there's been significant investments in other areas around potable water quality and reductions in sewer flooding as well. I think what's changed now is what was acceptable previously is no longer acceptable. The public are much more connected to the environment and much more aware of what's going on in the environment. And what we're now seeing is a sea change in that attitude. And by the way, we support that. We want to do more for the environment. And we are pushing our regulators hard, not the Environment Agency, because they push us very hard already, but pushing Ofwat hard to say, actually, we can go faster and bigger with this. But we need the funding to be able to do that. As I said to the previous question on investment, I think it's going to be an interesting time over the next 9 months, up until the final determination, because the regulators are wrestling with how much should we invest and how much can we afford to put on customers' bills as well. And I think that's really quite a tough task for the regulator. I'm pretty sure they will get the balance right at the end of the day. What you could continue to see, though, is also more and more pressure coming on. We want more environmental improvements, and actually we want it faster. Not by 2050, which is the current government plan. We want it all by 2040, for example. One of the things in the current plan is a set of investigations to actually investigate in more detail the environmental impact on storm overflow discharges to the environment. So we've got, in our plan, we've got 1,001 investigations at specific locations to determine the actual impact on the environment. That work's going to be finished by 2027. What you might find is that then informs the next phase of the government storm overflow discharge reduction programme. What that will say, I'm not sure at the minute, depends on the investigations. Because at the minute, the target is it's a pretty blunt target. Get those storm overflows to no more than 10 spills per annum, irrespective of the environmental harm that's being caused. So we might see a change in the next 5 years or so, with more having to be done.
Well, two more questions for me. One is, it seems a simple question really, but what is involved in improving the storm overflows? How is it improved? And the other one is, Hexham has a lot of old housing stock. So my house is about 120, 130 years old. We don't have dirty water and a clean water system. It just all goes into one flow. How is that going to be resolved in the future? How can it be resolved without huge investment in everyone's housing?
Yeah. So that answer to your second question is probably partly the first answer. So to improve storm overflows, what we're doing is trying to reduce the spills down to no more than 10 spills on average per annum. You saw from the slide that I showed earlier that a number of the storm overflows in this catchment were up in the 30s and 40s spills for 2023, which was a particularly wet year. So the easiest way to do that, but the hardest way also, is to take flow out of the system, so that when it rains, you don't get a lot of flow in the system, which makes the storm overflow then discharge to the environment. But the reason that's hard is that you have to do things such as what you described in your second question. You have to separate out the surface water from drainage systems and get that surface water to go somewhere else. So either directly to a river, to a water course, to an attenuation basin. So we're looking wherever possible to deliver what we would call green solutions to the issue, and that is take surface water out wherever we can, or build suds to slow the flow of surface water to stop them having an impact on storm overflows. The reality is we can't do that everywhere. So it's cost prohibitive, and in some cases there's just not the opportunity to do that. So what we end up doing is building storage somewhere on the network, generally near to the storm overflow, which means that when the rainfall comes, the flood of water goes into the storage that we have built. It's attenuated there until the storm has passed, and then it's allowed to discharge back into the network and find its way back down to the treatment works. So that's generally the solution we'll be putting in place.
John,
yes, thanks. Can I give you some figures just to mull over? And I also thought it was interesting what you just said, Mike, about things seem to be happening now that the public are aware of the problem. As if, well, nothing would be happening if we weren't making a fuss about it. And since privatisation, I've got figures to show that investment in the sewage processing has been reduced by a fifth. And now you're showing us figures, we're going to invest this huge amount of money and that huge amount of money, but it doesn't add up to the amount of money that should have been put in over those last few years. It suggests to me that you're in a no-win situation anyway, because you're a private company, you've got shareholders to pay off and so on. Public service and providing clean water and clean rivers isn't top of your list. Making a profit seems to be. And the figures that I mentioned, provided by The Guardian, say that Northumbrian Water is 3.5 billion, that's with a B, billion pounds in debt. And that equates to 19% of water bills services that debt. So almost a fifth of what we pay goes to pay that debt. And it's £2,628 per property. That's the amount of debt that Northumbria Water owe. At the same time, dividends have been paid to the tune of £3.7 billion. So you're 3.5 in debt, but you've paid out to shareholders living in Hong Kong, Timbuktu, and Azerbaijan, 3.7 billion. Now, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a system that's working? I think capitalists probably do. They're taking money from ordinary people who live in Hexham to the tune of £2,500 and giving it to those who have quite a lot of money anyway. That doesn't work for me. It might work for the capitalist system, but it doesn't work for me. So I don't think you're providing value for money. I don't think the Environment Agency is properly funded. I think the remit that you've been given is loose and woolly and not fit for purpose. And you have the original question about your money being your pension fund or whatever it is, investing in water companies. That doesn't sit quite right, does it? But the people who are monitoring shouldn't have anything, they should be separate. They shouldn't be the same, in the same pool. They should be separate completely. I know that's not how the capitalist revolving door system works. You know, if you take any aspect of government and overseeing one group of people, they suddenly become that group of people again. They swap jobs so regularly. So the Environment Agency has its hands tied behind its back by the government, I think. One group of people who are trying to monitor what goes on in the town very, very efficiently is a group at Wylam. You might well have heard of them. There's a group of citizen science people, and they are taking the measurements of the water quality in the Wylam area regularly. And they've had to fund this themselves. I wonder if either of your organisations would care to fund other citizen science groups that might get set up in the area to help you do this very, very important monitoring that we're all realise is required. That's one question that I've got. And another question hasn't really got to do with sewage, it's got to do with the forever chemicals that are in our water. You've asked for the names of them. I couldn't give you the names, Alison, but I can tell you what effects they have. And this comes from the Royal Society of Chemists. And it can...
John, I'm conscious it's 7 o'clock.
I am coming to a question.
Well, please do it quick.
Okay. These forever chemicals which are in our drinking water and what can cause developmental defects in children. They can cause cancers, thyroid problems, fertility problems. What are you doing to get rid of those? That's my question.
Okay, so we'll just, I think it was unfair to think challenge you and ask you a question on the capitalist system, because obviously we all live inside that. That's just the way it is. So I think just the questions there is one about the citizens and two about the heavy chemicals.
Well, we do have a role supporting citizen science, and I'm not sure what funding there is available. I think maybe some bits of equipment and those types of things that can be available at times. So, you know, I'm happy to provide that contact, Alison's details, and, you know, if there were groups in the locality who are interested in getting in touch, then that would be very welcome.
Thank you.
So just on the Wylam, I think the Wylam one isn't what you were talking about. So we attended a forum with Wylam, I think it was back end of last year, 2023. Wylam had made an application to make it a bathing water in that location. So we've already been working with that group and said we'll be happy to support that application. If the application was successful, because DEFRA rejected it initially, I'm sure the group will go back again. We would then look at, okay, what does that mean for any of our assets within that location, and whether we need to carry out investment to improve those assets to improve the water quality there. So we are very much aware of it and looking to support that group should they have a successful application.
So, Jane, final question from the 7 o'clock, so maybe short.
It sort of follows on from John with the chemicals really. I'm just wondering what powers you have to try and limit the runoff from agriculture. Because you talk about monitoring all these things, but I'm just wondering actually what you actually then do with the results that you have.
Yeah, so we have a team that works principally in specific catchments where there are recognised issues, go out and work with the farmer on their holding and on their pollution risks and how they're managed. And there are certain standards that have to be met. So there is an enforcement role should that be appropriate. But we do take an advice and guidance led approach to work with farmers to resolve those sorts of problems.
Right, I mean, I have several questions, but I'm going to obviously be just conscious of time. We have the business of council to do. So I'll call it there. I'd just like to thank both of you for really enlightening presentation and being pretty honest with you. I think there's been some really challenging questions there. There's been some really interesting answers to them. Certainly I've learned a lot tonight, I'm sure everybody else has as well. So thank you for that. We'll certainly consider bringing you back at another stage. I'm conscious that there's a Northumberland County Council, Tyndale Local Area Council, which I think will be a much better place to actually continue the conversations with you, because I'm always conscious like democracy for Parish Town Council, we cover about a mile stretch of the Tyne, and the Tyne covers many divisions of in parishes of Tynedale. So I'm kind of thinking that something under the Northumberland County Council Tynedale Local Area Committee, which could cover the whole strategic piece of the Tyne, would be probably much more appropriate, because it'll cover all the way from Alston up the Upsoff and all those types of things, north and south Tyne, and the River Tyne going eastwards as well. So, but certainly, obviously other parish councils are more interested, more welcome to come to those meetings. So, I'll call it an end there. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Right, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move at pace. So item number 8. I'm going to do 8 first. So mayor's announcements. So we had we had the mayor's reception, which was a great networking piece. Really good energy in the room. Lots of people networking. Lots of people knew about that. I attended the Wombles litter pick. Again, public engagement into removing rubbish from around the streets of Hexham. Really, really positive. I attended the Tyndale Hospice at home opening with our new premise on Front Street, and that was really, really busy. I attended an Easter bonnet, or several Easter bonnets at the Gateway and the Easter bonnet competition, which was really good fun. Attended the Hexham Net Zero event, but again, a little conversation about that later on. The Bluegrass crowd funder has opened, and I'm pleased to see that it's starting to get plenty of money in there. So that's really, really well done to Penny for getting that up and going, and thank you to everybody who contributed. I think we'll have to help with a push on that one thing in the next few weeks. And also, I'm going to invite Penny in just to say a few words on Grow Hexham and a funding request that they made to the Northern Mail, the National Lottery, I should say, yeah. So I'll bring you in, Penny, on that one.
Okay, thank you very much. So Grow Hexham has been going since 2022. And we made an application to the National Lottery, which funded last year's after a crowdfunder. And then we had a funding gap and we put another application in and we've been successful. So we have secured enough money for the next 2 years for the Grow Hexham project. So we came in just under £14,000, which is what we asked for. And that means that we can consolidate. The coordinator is actually leaving at the end of May, so we've distributed far and wide a job description for her post. So if you know anybody who would like to apply, please draw their attention to it. It's on the Town Council website. Thank you.
Excellent. Well done, Penny. Right, so I'm going to go back to item number 6, which is the minutes of the last meeting. So page 3, page 4, page 5, permission to sign. Thank you. That's good. So next item is item number. We've got 2 8s, by the way. So we'll do the second 8, which is to agree the council payment. So page 6, page 7, page 8. Any questions on that? Thank you. Number 9 is to note the draft minutes includes of committees held in February. So we are looking at page 9, which is the finance and general purposes. And page 10. Okay. Page 11, which is community engagement committee. Page 12. On page 13. On page 14, planning and infrastructure. On page 15. Thank you. Very good. So correspondence.
Network Rail Biodiversity, a number of TTROs, Thriving Together, Nalkey News, CBA and Chris's.
Good. So I'm now going to invite to receive a report from the Hexham Net Zero. So Ariane, would you look at you just say a few words?
Yeah, we had our 4th Hexham Net Zero fair this year, 23rd of March, and it went very well. We had lots of good feedback from the stallholders. A little bit more, a few more people turned up than last time, so we had about 540 people. Couldn't have done it without the support from the Queen's Hall, Hexham Community Partnership and the library. All of them were really helpful and provided space or help organising it. We had about 24 different stalls, from the Environment Agency to local groups like Active Travel Tyndale, Transition Tyndale. I think generally it was very popular, people networked and learned new things, were inspired, and I think it's worth repeating, and so do the people who were there.
Good, well done you. And item number 12 is to receive a report from Mike on electric vehicles event.
Yeah, thanks. So with about 40% of climate change gases coming from transport and home heating systems, I decided to do an electric event, which is all about, I just called it an electric event. It was all about how people can change their transport and how people can change their heating systems. So I kind of bankrolled it still off the back of all the work Ariane's done for the Queen's Hall and Hexham Abbey. Hexham Abbey gave me their car park used for free, so I had about 400 people turn up. There were BMWs, there were Nissan Leafs, there were Teslas, there was a car club in the car park. That ticked over quite nicely. I had somebody that, Jan from Northumberland County Council could do training on e-bikes. I had one late person arrive with 6 electric bikes and he was really busy. So him and Jan teamed up at the front of the Principal Library. By far the most busiest place was the central library, which was installers that were doing solar panels, pump and batteries. And that was really kind of busy. And the feedback I had was that people wanted to do something and they needed to connect and they found it really useful. And the installers who I begged to come thought it was great. They liked the library and some of the car companies said they would come again. So I'm probably going to repeat the event.
Brilliant. Yeah, well done, both of you. Fantastic stuff. Okay, well, that was it. That takes us to the end of the Hexham Town Council for this evening. So thank you all. Thank you.